Whether you're a plotter or a pantster, it's important to structure your story right. I know, story structure. No one wants to talk about that, Sharon. I promise you that today's lesson about how to plot your story with the beat sheet is going to make you want to plot your next story.
The 5 beats that I plan are the inciting incident, which happens in Act 1, sometime in Act 1. Now, this shows it at the middle. Mine happens at the very beginning. So that's not necessarily when it needs to happen, but it has to happen before plot point 1. Plot point 1, midpoint, plot point 2, and the climax. Those are the 5 things that I plot out and plan before I start writing my story. And I use a beat sheet that Jamie Gold has for that. And I will drop the links to her beat sheet page in the group afterwards so that you can find those and find one. She has them for multiple genres. So I use the general one, but she has them for multiple genres. So if you're writing a romance, she has a romance one. If you're writing a mystery, I believe she has a mystery one. All right. So using the beat sheet, I plot these 5 major points and I write from one point to the next. And I always am keeping the end of the story in mind, and I'll explain that more as I show you my story. Okay, so first let's explain what those plot points are. So you might be going, thanks Sharon for telling me these 5 beats, but I don't even know what you're talking about. Okay, so the inciting incident is the event in the story that shakes up your character's normal world so that they have to consider making a change. All right, they can't stay with the status quo. They have to make a change some way or another. Okay, so a change is forced upon them by this inciting incident. Okay, now the first plot point is it's Larry Brooks likes to describe it as a point of no return, and I will show you the 2 major books that I use for plotting structure when I talk about the first plot point later on during this, because one of the lessons will be on this first plot point. But it's like a doorway. Your character is going to step through it when they decide to act in response to the inciting incident, okay, and try to solve the story problem. So that is the first plot point. A lot of times, is it doing the thing? Is it deciding the thing? Either one works. So don't get too hung up on that you need to know what your first plot point is. You just need to have one, okay? And if you think, well, is it the day they decide or is it the day they act? It could be either. As long as you can have both those scenes, one of those scenes, it could be either of them, all right? Then the midpoint happens about 50%. And this is generally when your character gets some sort of new information that helps them see what could be if they could only stop being deceived by their lie. If they could overcome their greatest fear and push towards the truth about themselves rather than believing the lie. And the midpoint can be very complex. It can be very simple. And so there will be a lesson later, actually in week 6, midway through, where I talk more about that. All right. Now, the dark moment is when all seems to be lost. There's no way they can win. They have lost. There's no way they're going to defeat the story problem or solve the story problem. It's over for them. Okay. Usually in the romance, this is during the breakup. This is when the breakup happens. All right. And then the second plot point is the final push to the climax when your hero is facing down his fear. Okay. His fear comes to pass that he has to face it down. And because he chooses to believe the truth rather than be motivated by his lie, so he has to have a little bit of an epiphany before this can happen. And we'll talk about all that later. He's able to. But that second plot point generally is what most people consider the climax of the story. And usually it is multiple scenes, multiple chapters. Okay, this is a big deal. Your whole story has been leading up to this. So if it can happen in 1,000 words, your reader is going to be disappointed because it's all been leading up to this. And so they want this to be intense. They want this to, they want to be able to experience it in full bloom. Okay. So now here are my major beats, the 5 major beats for Suicide Island. Well, as it stands now. Sharon, what do you mean? I mean that a lot of times as I'm writing, things will change. My characters will take off. They'll do a bunch of strange things. And I'm going, oh, well, now this is really going to be the midpoint then. Oh, well, the dark point then is going to be blah, blah. Okay. So hold on to these loosely. That's what I'm trying to tell you. You decide to do these, use the 5 beats to write your story. Hold on to them loosely. Let your character tell you their story. So the inciting incident is when her family dies in the car accident. I already mentioned that. The first plot point is when she decides to walk into the ocean to join her family. She's going to join her family. Okay. And that is how she makes it to Suicide Island. So wakes up on an island instead of in heaven. It's kind of a big shock for her. Okay. The midpoint is when I don't know the guy's name yet. So everyone on the island calls him the Nutter anyway. He's the Nutter. Don't worry about the Nutter. Well, the Nutter has these salient moments when he offers up wisdom. And one of them happens at the midpoint. And it gives, because he sees her sacrificial spirit, it gives her a vision of her sacrificial spirit and how that might be something that can redeem her, so she doesn't deserve to die. Because remember, that's the lie that she believes about herself. Okay. So then the dark moment is when the Nutter and the nurse, who is her friend, a friend that she makes on the island, leave the island. And now she's like, she's still stuck here. What did they do? How did they get off? Well, she can't ask them because they're gone. And so now she has this whole big quandary. What does she need to do? She has no idea. All is lost. She's going to be stuck here forever. She's never going to get to join her family. The end. That's her dark moment. Okay. And then the second plot point is when she allows herself to open up her heart to Keen, who is another person who is stuck on the island. So the romantic interest, but not really, because it's not a romance. It's a women's fiction. But she does have to believe she can love someone again. That's part of her journey of what she needs to do to be able to get to escape the island.